Hello and welcome back to the Florida Rights Institute informational video series. Today we're going to cover the Florida Tree Cutdown Notice Requirement Exemption. It's an overview of state tree cutdown notice exemptions for certain residential homes. As always, the following presentation is meant for informational purposes only and is not intended as legal advice. Seek a licensed attorney if you need legal assistance. Historically, many Floridians had difficulty cutting down trees on their own property due to county and city rules that restricted tree cutting. Often, homeowners were stuck with tree cutdown bans or exorbitant permitting fees that made removing trees a burden. Devastating fines would be levied against homeowners who broke local ordinances. The Florida legislature moved to restore property rights for homeowners with House Bill 1159. It went into law in 2019. The Florida legislature passed a wide, sweeping rule that enabled cutdowns without notice. The Florida House Bill 1159 provided that a local government may not require a notice, application, approval, permit, fee, or mitigation for the pruning, trimming, or removal of a tree on residential property if the property owner obtains documentation that the tree presents a danger to persons or property from an arborist certified by the International Society of Arboriculture or a Florida licensed landscape architect. While this was a big win for property rights, the original open-ended scope was narrowed just a few years later after some complained that developers were using the law too broadly for cutdowns. Unfortunately, the legislature caved and decided to restrict the law's scope, making the use cases more limited with Senate Bill 518, legislation that came into effect July 1st, 2022. The new statute was revised to limit the exemption to residential property. It only applied to residential property defined as a single-family detached building located on a lot that is actively used for single-family residential purposes and that is either a conforming use or legally recognized non-conforming use in accordance with the local jurisdiction's applicable land development regulations. The new documentation requirements became narrower in scope with specific guidance. Documentation means an on-site assessment performed in accordance with the tree risk assessment procedures outlined in Best Management Practices, Tree Risk Assessment 2nd Edition 2017 by an arborist certified by the International Society of Arboriculture or a Florida licensed landscape architect and signed by the certified arborist or licensed landscape architect. If one meets the new statutory conditions, then the Florida statutes provide that a local government may not require a notice, application, approval, permit, fee, or mitigation for the pruning, trimming, or removal of a tree on residential property if the property owner possesses documentation from an arborist certified by the ISA or a Florida licensed landscape architect that the tree poses an unacceptable risk to persons or property. A tree poses an unacceptable risk if removal is the only means of practically mitigating its risk below moderate, as determined by the Tree Risk Assessment procedures outlined in Best Management Practices, Tree Risk Assessment 2nd Edition from 2017. A local government may not require a property owner to replant a tree that was pruned, trimmed, or removed in accordance with this section. However, this section does not apply to the exercise of specifically delegated authority for mangrove protection pursuant to the statutes 403-9321 to 9333. In summary, while there is a lot left to be desired for protecting Floridians' rights to cut down their own trees on their own property, there is still an avenue for residential property owners to avoid the strict and onerous rules often put onto tree removal by localities. It's important to make sure you follow the statutory guidelines and check with an attorney before performing any cutdown work, as the penalties can be serious if one does not fall into the statutory exemption. Thank you so much for watching this informational video on Florida's tree cutdown exemption rule. For more informational and educational videos, please subscribe to this channel and visit www.floridarights.org.